At 4 a.m. on 16 November 1944, the 28th Infantry Division was locked in a grinding assault against well-dug German positions in the Hürtgen forest. The woods choked with entanglements, bunkers and hidden machine gun nests favored the Germans, and American units were being badly mauled as attacks faltered against prepared positions. After a heavy German artillery barrage shattered the lines, a K Company sniper was cut off from his platoon and hours later found himself behind enemy lines. His name in the after-action reports is Private Thomas Rourke. That's not the name on his dog tags, but it's the one he kept when he crossed back 2 weeks later. 23. Philly machinist before the draft, he knows tolerances and threads better than most armory clerks. His rifle is an M1903, a 4 Springfield with an M73B1 scope and a canvas cheekpiece that still smells like oil and rain. In a bombed-out woodworking shed near Germeter, he scavenges a dented tin can and a short length of thin metal tube from a mangled stove. No blueprints, no measurements, no tools, except tape, wire, and a pocket knife. He sleeves the can and pipe over the Springfield's muzzle, braces the wobble with whatever he can scrounge, and prays the next squeeze won't tear his face off. It's not a silencer. It's an act of desperation. It will hold for 5, maybe 6 shots before it loosens and throws rounds wide. After that, he'll rip it off and lash on another. Accuracy suffers, risk climbs. He does it anyway because the forest punishes noise, not courage. The first test comes at 7:22. A gray strip of dawn leaking through firs. A German officer lieutenant by the shoulder straps steps out of a timber bunker near a junction the maps label Call Trail and starts waving a map at 2 Feldgendarmerie with gorgets glinting in the half-light. They're sorting traffic. Opel Blitz trucks, a bicycle messenger, a pair of horse teams dragging 10.5 centimeters shells. Rourke settles his crosshairs a hair high for 180 yards. Wind negligible, heart hammering because if this tin can trick pops like a snare drum, he'll have 30 rifles combing his grid in seconds. He squeezes. What comes out of the muzzle isn't silence, but it isn't a rifle crack either. It's a wet cough, a hiss, a sound small enough to be swallowed by engine noise and clanking tow chains. The lieutenant takes the round through the throat and drops without a shout. Both Feldgendarmerie look the wrong way down the trail toward the American lines, muzzles swinging past Rourke's hide by 20 degrees. He breathes again, rides the bolt, and resists the urge to fire twice. With this contraption, he doesn't get groups, he gets chances. 2 more officers step out to understand why orders just stopped moving. He waits until the second sticks his head into the light to yell. Another cough, another fall. Then he goes to ground, counting to 60 while boots drum and voices stack on voices, all of them searching for a report that never came. By noon, he's learned the limits. The can heats, starts to rattle, groups open from a handspan to a dinner plate, and the 5th shot tears a fringe of bark a foot left of where he aimed. The trick is simple and brutal. Spend your 5 on men who move other men. Only officers, runners, anyone carrying a map case. Then break contact and rebuild the stupid little thing somewhere else. Hürtgen favors the stubborn and the quiet. Rourke's tin can gamble gives him both just enough silence to make one shot look like a fluke, just enough time to slip before the forest answers back. And as the 28th regroups on the western slopes and the 8th Infantry Division fights in, German traffic starts to clot at the call crossings. Not because American guns are heavier, but because one ghost in the trees is cutting the head off every order that tries to reach the front. Rourke's rhythm becomes methodical. Scavenge, rig, shoot, move. 5 shots per can. Each can costs accuracy and cadence, but buys a small slice of invisibility. He learns the arithmetic fast. 1 officer down equals maybe 10 minutes of delayed orders, maybe a hauled to side company that misses a junction, maybe a fuel truck rerouted. In a war of hours, 10 minutes is a commodity. He stops wasting rounds on sentries and MG nests. He begins to hunt the men who make decisions. On November 8th, he finds his second target set at Monschau Road, a narrow pocked lane where German supply traffic funnels past an orchard. A Hauptmann conducts a roll call beside an Opel with a crate of sighting gear. Rourke slings up from a sunken hedge, breath steaming in a cold that bites hands. The can is quieter than the Springfield alone. An inch of sound wrapped in metal, but it eats at ballistics, group-size balloons, point-of-impact walks, and every missed round is a message. He compensates by shortening the engagement range. 120-220 yards becomes his sweet spot. That day he fires 3 shots, each with surgical intent. Hauptmann dead. A courier attempting to radio up mortally wounded. A driver who hops from the Opel, driven by reflex into the line of fire. Pinned and captured by nearby partisans who'd been watching the lane for their own reasons. Word trickles down through prisoner interrogations. Someone is killing officers at command points. Movement is now dangerous. The German response is pragmatic and paranoid. Kommandantur orders start circulating on captured slips. No officers to stand in the open. Runners to approach in pairs. Radio silence on certain approach roads. Supply movement shifted to night only. But Rourke is opportunistic. Night moves make logistics clumsy. Night moves make visibility poor. Night moves create predictable light flares over crossroads. Muzzle flashes from Bren guns. Those are exactly the noises into which his tin can cough can disappear. He learns to use German procedures against them. On the 11th, the tin can trick nearly fails. He takes a shot at a Hauptfeldwebel near a crossroads. The can chokes. The bark on the tree in front of him flakes as the round flashes through, and the loud crack draws 3 rifles toward his flank. He doesn't hunker down and wait, he runs. 40 yards through knee-twisting bramble, across a frozen drainage ditch, under the broken limb of a spruce. The Germans push pebbles of tracer fire where he'd been. He crosses the ridge, hears running boots, then muffled curses he's alive. Not because of the can, but because he practiced movement as rigorously as marksmanship. Lessons learned. Silence gets you shots. Speed gets you the second life to build another tin can. His impact scales as Germans reroute. A battalion commander later reports that during a 24-hour period, their coordination was as if someone had snipped at the seams. Supply columns bunch, fuel lags by hours, armored push timelines slip. The front that depended on timely orders finds itself waiting for confirmation that won't come. Field morale sours when radios stutter and captains go missing. The officer sniping tactic becomes a force multiplier. A single sniper with poor man's suppressor reshapes an operational tempo. Rourke's body count rises quietly. He avoids propaganda numbers. This isn't hubris. He takes pains to conceal bodies, or make deaths look like accidents, or mortar misfires when possible, because an obvious trail of assassinations brings hunted days. Once, he drags a fallen lieutenant's map case into brambles and smears mud over the collar, so the recovery party thinks the man collapsed from exposure. Small deceptions that keep the German hunt unfocused. The Germans adapt beyond discipline. They use decoys, men in greatcoats, standing on bridges or out in courtyards to bait snipers. They string tripwires and set up overlapping arcs for flanking shot attempts. If a sniper is in a window, 2 men will cross to the flank and fire to force him to move. Rourke counters with patience. He waits for patterns, where decoys cluster, where flanking arcs converge. He sets his can for officers who move with a stack of signals, map cases, flashes of radio linen, drivers checking engine blocks, recognizing that the enemy's procedural rigidity helps him find targets. One decisive night, November 14th, he sees a convoy pause in a farmyard near Wassenach, while a staff car backs along a lane. 3 officers cluster over a lantern as a wireless operator keys a message. The tin can muffles the first shot to a wet cough. The lantern gutter goes out as the second shot finds the operator. Confusion blooms. Generators stutter. Drivers slump. and in the paper-thin panic, a patrol of American paratroopers, operating 2 kilometers away, hears the stalled convoy and slips in to take prisoners. The operation reads afterward as an Allied wild success. Intelligence files note, enemy staff, disrupted by isolated sniper action. Convoy, captured. Rourke files it under survival. Rourke's rule is simple and merciless. 5 quiet chances, use them on the people who move others. He becomes surgical because he must. Each shot risks exposure, each miss risks death. Yet the method is elegant in its calculus. Remove decision-makers, and the machine misfires. The Germans, once efficient in rail timetables and vehicle rotations, find themselves improvising. Commanders order liaison officers to ride escort, reduce open-air briefings, and send senior staff to the rear. Those measures slow operations. They do not stop them, but they give the Allies breathing room on a front where minutes mattered. By November 18th, Rourke is running low on cans. He's scavenged every tin he can find: coffee tins, ration cans, a dented luncheon tin from a collapsed mess hall, but repairs and fabrications use up time and planning he can't always spare. The limitation proves decisive. The cans only last a handful of rounds before accuracy collapses. That constraint forces him to prioritize. He stops shooting at non-essential targets, stops wasting rounds on chance. Each engagement becomes an economy problem. Allocate silence to maximize disruption. Throughout this period, he doesn't act as a lone rogue for long. He passes intelligence routes, timings, officer habits to an American reconnaissance squad that risks daylight raids to exploit the holes he creates. Partisan cells intercept supply and echo his hits to rear echelon intelligence. His work is asymmetrical. Small, repeated disruptions feeding larger conventional moves. The result is an operational friction the German staff cannot smooth out quickly. Rourke's luck runs out on the 22nd when a German counter-sniper team, assembled from veterans of the Eastern Front and equipped with captured No. 4 SMLEs and a calibrated understanding of suppressed reports, closes in. They bait a meeting with an officer decoy in a shell-torn orchard and wait with overlapping arcs. Rourke takes the first can's worth and misses once a flinch of wind, a tin ring loosening, and the second he must use to kill a courier before the alert spreads. The third shot fails to drop the decoy. The fourth almost turns his hiding place into a grave when a tracer peeks through leaves. He slips out under mortar smoke, bruised, shaken, and with the taste of copper in his mouth. It's the first time in weeks he doubts strategy over luck. His response is bureaucratic pragmatism. Fewer attempts, longer waits, better recon. He trades the reckless tempo for patience, for intelligence-driven action. He studies officers' rituals, lunchtime, smoke breaks, map handoffs at dawn, courier rotations, and focuses on that rhythm. The Germans respond with increased anonymity in command, moving officers under canvas or in armored cars. The cat and mouse escalates. But the lasting effect of Rourke's campaign is strategic noise. The Germans, forced into micro-security, waste the human time they need to fight. Repair crews wait for clear routes, anti-air liaison delays resupply windows, fuel depots see trucks arrive cold and idle. Rourke's tin can gambit doesn't win battles in the classical sense, but it reshapes the schedule of war, lengthening windows and creating openings for the Allies to punch through. When the 28th finally peels back across the ridge and recovers the area in late November, they find evidence maps with pins removed, diaries with crossed-out meeting places, and the faint smell of oil where cans were left behind. Men who'd been under his fire speak of a quiet voice in the thickets, a rifle that made no thunder, and men who disappeared. Rourke returns a few nights later, muddy and colder, skirting patrols, with a handful of tins in a sack and a dozen notes of thanks scribbled in partisan handwriting. He slips back into American lines, carrying nothing but his rifle and the knowledge that 5 small, quiet shots can tilt decisions. November 23rd, 1000. 944. The Battle of Hürtgen grinds on, blind and bloody. The trees are black skeletons now splintered by artillery, their bark peeled off by shrapnel and wind. Snow turns red and brown where it pools in shell craters. Every inch of forest costs lives, and neither side gives ground easily. For the men trapped inside, the world is small, 50 yards of fog and fear. Private Thomas Rourke moves through that fog like he belongs to it. It's been 17 days since he last saw a friendly face. His uniform's torn, his boots leak, and his hands have the gray, cracked look of frostbite. His rifle looks worse, stock gouged, barrel scratched, one tin can left strapped to the muzzle with wire that used to hold a fence gate. It rattles faintly when he walks, a sound too soft for anyone but him to hear. He's hunting again. German radio traffic the night before had mentioned a command post relocating east of Schmidt. Rourke's learned to listen for that kind of chatter, the hurried transmissions that signal something vulnerable on the move. Command posts are gold mines. Maps, radios, officers with ranks that matter. And when an officer dies in the Hürtgen, confusion kills more soldiers than bullets. The route to Schmidt winds through steep ravines and pine stands littered with burnt trucks and frozen horses. Along the way, Rourke passes 2 dead German scouts, shot in the back by their own nervous infantry the night before. The forest eats men without asking which flag they fight for. Near midday, he finds the command post, a bunker dug into a hillside, camouflaged with branches, smoke leaking from the stovepipe. A Kubelwagen sits outside, its engine ticking as it cools. A sergeant stands guard, stamping his feet against the cold. Rourke watches through his scope, lying belly down in a shallow depression, snow melting under him. The can on his rifle is dented, warped from the last firefight, but it's still serviceable. 5 shots, maybe 6 if he's lucky. He only needs 1. He waits for movement. At 1,320 hours, the target appears. A tall man in a long gray coat, a colonel by the insignia. He steps out of the bunker, followed by an adjutant carrying a clipboard. The colonel lights a cigarette, cupping the match from the wind, the smoke curling like a signal. Rourke breathes in, exhales. The crosshairs settle center chest. The rifle coughs. The colonel jerks back 2 steps and falls, the cigarette still burning in his glove. The adjutant freezes, looks around wildly. There's no sound, no flash, no echo, just confusion. Rourke slides down the slope before anyone can fix his position, vanishing into the undergrowth. Within seconds, the Germans are shouting, firing blind into trees. But the echoes die quickly. The forest swallows the noise. When they search the ridgeline later, they'll find only footprints leading nowhere, and a few drops of oil where a tin can once was. He rebuilds that night in an abandoned barn, using a new can from an old ration crate. The process takes 10 minutes. Each time he does it, it gets easier, faster. He's not thinking about craftsmanship anymore, it's about survival. For 2 days, the forest is quiet. Then the rumors start. Prisoners tell American interrogators about a ghost sniper operating around Schmidt. A single rifle shot, almost silent, taking out officers and staff before vanishing. Some Germans think it's a suppressed weapon smuggled from the British. Others say it's a partisan with stolen Soviet equipment. The fear works better than the bullet. Commanders start limiting outdoor briefings. Some wear enlisted men's uniforms to disguise rank. Orders are delayed while officers wait for the cover of night or fog to move. The result? The American artillery, blind and desperate for targets, finally starts catching convoys stalled by that confusion. Every minute an officer hesitates is another barrage that finds them still in the open. Rourke never sees the shells land, but he hears them at night, the rolling thunder miles away that tells him his work has rippled outward. By now, he's a myth in both armies. The 28th Division's surviving scouts whisper about a sniper who went missing but never stopped fighting. They say he's half feral, living on German rations and snowmelt, moving between wrecked villages and trenches. One even claims to have found his old firing position just a shallow scrape under tree roots, with a pile of empty cans laid out like trophies. But the myth has limits. Rourke's down to his last handful of 30-06 rounds. He scavenges what he can, half-full stripper clips from dead Americans, mismatched cartridges from abandoned supply caches, but each time he fires, he counts what's left and feels the math close in. 6 rounds means 6 chances, and if the tin can loosens before he uses them all, the next sound he makes might bring an entire platoon on top of him. On November 26th, a snowstorm rolls in, blanketing the forest in silence thicker than any suppressor could manage. For the first time in weeks, Rourke hears nothing. No artillery, no rifles, no engines. Just wind and his own heartbeat. He almost relaxes. Then, through the snow, he hears footsteps. 3 Germans' infantry, frostbitten and exhausted, move through the trees, dragging a sled with supplies. One carries an MP-40, slung loose over his shoulder. They're close enough for Rourke to smell the tobacco on their coats. He freezes, finger on the trigger. Shooting now would risk everything. The tin can might muffle the crack, but the flash in the dark could still betray him. He doesn't fire. He lets them pass. That's the moment he realizes what the can has given him isn't silence, it's choice. Before, every target demanded a shot or death. Now he can choose when to speak and when to vanish. That choice keeps him alive another week. By early December, his legend precedes him. German officers in the Hürtgen start wearing steel helmets indoors. Dispatch riders travel in groups. And on the American side, intelligence officers start collecting testimonies about a silent shooter disrupting German command flow. They never find him. Rourke doesn't need them to. He isn't fighting for medals or mention in a report. He's fighting for the seconds of quiet between the shots, the narrow margin where the noise of war can't find him. December 2nd, 1944. The front is a ragged dog of foxholes, wrecked farmsteads, and frozen shell holes. Winter has a way of clarifying responsibility. Who moves? Who waits? Who dies from exposure before the bullets find them? Rourke has learned that senior men move with ritual map cases, brisk gestures, a cigarette handed between palms. Those rituals make them predictable. They make them vulnerable. News reaches him through a scavenged leaflet and whispered prisoner reports. The Germans are consolidating a thrust to cut the American salient at Monschau. A staff meeting will convene in a ruined vicarage 3 kilometers beyond the ridge. By killing the staff officers, Rourke could bottle commanders into indecision for a day, enough time for the 28th to reposition artillery and for an armor squadron to reinforce the ridge. The stakes are tactical, immediate, and exactly the kind of leverage one man with patience can buy.